he had great love and respect for Jesus and all the world's religions, but Jesus especially. And so he would say that Jesus had an understanding and preached karma and other concepts like reincarnation in ways that were more consistent with Eastern philosophy than we realize.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of the Spiritual Inspired Show. I am your host, Gabriel Claudiu Murgan. For older episodes, I invite you to visit spiritualinspired.ca, our YouTube channel, gnostictv.com. And for purchasing my books, you can visit soulawakeningstore.com. As for today, my guest is a return one, Philip Goldberg. Philip, thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you.
You've been on this show almost 3 years ago. We talk about your other books, your writing activities, and everything else under the sun. But you have a new project that you specifically want to talk about it. So this is your
Mhm.
new book, Karmic Relief.
Strategically placed right over my left shoulder for
Indeed.
those watching video. Yes, I have a book coming out um, in October. I don't know when people will be listening to this, but October of 2025, and it's called Karmic Relief, and it's all about karma.
Yes, it was an interesting read. You were kind to send me a PDF copy, so I had the chance to prepare for the interview. So I want to start by asking you what inspired you to write Karmic Relief after years of resisting the concept of karma? Was there a turning point in your personal journey?
Not as such. It's karma has kind of been on my mind for many decades, ever since the early days of my spiritual path when I was uh, absorbing spiritual concepts from the East. And I came across karma like everybody does. And in those days, it wasn't on everybody's vocabulary. So, I read about it and I thought, at first, I was very skeptical. It was like, I don't know about, I don't see evidence that everything we do, everything we think has consequences that come back to us. Sometimes it's obvious, in everyday life. You do something, something happens. But overall, you see people, good people suffering. You see bad people who don't seem to have any consequences. So how can you justify that? But over time, I came to think it felt intuitively right to me that the universe has laws of cause and effect, just like it has physical laws. And it started to feel more rational. And when I realized that the sages of the East, the wise ones, uh, built into their understanding of karma was that you can't know, human beings don't have the minds to fully comprehend the details, the intricacies of karma. Uh, and and so, I stopped trying to figure it out. And in the end, I decided, well, if I have a choice between assuming karma is real and assuming it's not, I'll be a better person if I assume it's real. And I'll think twice before I do something selfish or harmful to somebody else. And I thought, well, if everybody could take that leap, the world would be a better place. And over time, to get back to your original question, over time, I saw, just like so many other concepts from Eastern spiritual teachings, they became part of our mainstream culture, just like yoga has and mindfulness has and all the rest. And karma starts to be used in popular songs. Taylor Swift has a song called Karma. and in movies and TV commercials. And so I said, well, it's part of the vocabulary, but I see it misused a lot. I see people have some misunderstandings or superficial understanding. And I kept thinking of writing a book about it, and I kept postponing it. But my wife and my agent kept saying, why don't you do that book on karma? So eventually I listened.
Yeah, and you had a bit of spare time, and you said, why not?
Well, I had a choice of what my next book project would be, and the vote was for this.
Yes. And you mentioned in the book that karma is being both simple and nuanced. How do you reconcile its intuitive appeal with its philosophical complexity?
Yeah, you're right. It's on the one hand extremely simple. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, as they say in physics. Everything has consequences. Nothing we do or say or think does not have consequences, some big, some small, um, and they come back to us. That's simple. We reap what we sow. Um, the complexity is in the details because some of what we do interacts with other things we do and things other people do, and the natural laws of physics and chemistry and biology. And if you add up all those influences and think over a long course of time, in some cases, the complexity is so great that you can't predict accurately and say, oh, if I do this, then that's going to happen to me at this time. Too complicated. Similarly, you can't say, this is happening now to me or to them or to you or whoever. Therefore, such and such must have happened at some time in the past. It's too complex for that. And that I find is liberating because we have a tendency to say, why is this happening? What's going to happen if I do this? Some of it we just can't know. We can know in general. You do something harmful to other people, you do something selfish, you do something cruel, it's going to come back to you. How, when, in what form, no one knows.
Yes, it's interesting that you said that because in the last 4 or 5 years, I heard the term instant karma referred to so many times, and is in the connotation of you did something wrong today or something bad, and almost instantly or within 24, 48 hours, you get your answer back and is not pleasant. Have you encountered something similar?
Yeah, oh, well, John Lennon wrote a song called Instant Karma in the 70s. Um, but it's true sometimes, and the people who study these things and their nuances will say, yeah, there's such a thing as instant karma. Slap somebody in the face, you can bet something quick is going to happen in return. So sometimes it is fairly obvious. Oh, I got a parking ticket. Why? Because you parked in the wrong place. That's instant karma. It's obvious. Uh, I whatever. But while we're at it, see, I just did something I want to warn listeners about, which is most of the time when you see people talk about karma, it's when something bad happens. So John Lennon's instant karma was all about you've been mean, you've been bad, it's going to come back to you. Instant karma is going to get you. That was, a lyric. In most of the pop songs about karma, it's like, well, you done me wrong. Now karma's going to get you. Karma's a bitch, and but all the good stuff is karma too. Everything is karma. So all of our blessings, all the good things that happen to us, when something good happens to us, we don't say, "Oh, why is this happening to me?" But when something bad happens, we say, "Why is this happening to me?" And when somebody does something bad to us, we say karma's gonna get back to you. If somebody does something nice, we don't say, "Oh, you're gonna have good karma for doing that." But the good stuff is equally karmic, just as the bad stuff is. Um, I think I answered your question. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, so along the same line, you studied karma both from a Eastern and Western perspective. So, do you think that the Western is misunderstanding this concept and is treating it wrongly?
Well, if you spend time in India, as I have, you'll see people misusing it there too. So that's fairly common. But people with a more nuanced understanding, whether they're in the East or the West, if they had good teachers, if they read the right books, they'll use it appropriately and use it with accuracy. The West doesn't have on its own in our Western philosophy or Western theology and metaphysics. I mean, it's Christ who gave us the expression, "You reap what you sow." I mean, that's in the Bible, but it's the form by which we think it happens. I don't want to speak for Jesus and what he might really have believed. Sorry. Uh, but the way the universe has been explained in Western religion and Western philosophy, either it's not fair, it's not just, it's all like, many materialists will say, you know, it's not a moral universe. It's not fair at all. And others will say, those who accept a kind of the personal God figure will say it's God's doing. God will make sure the evil get what's coming to them and the good are rewarded in heaven and hell. All those models were meant to uh, describe a universe that's fair. I favor karma because it's less superstitious and more rational to me than a deity sitting there judging every little thing. Uh, so I don't like the judicial model. I prefer the educational model that karma kind of represents. Things happen to us, we pay the consequences, we learn from them, we change our behavior. It makes us responsible for the past, the present, and the future.
Indeed. And you mentioned an ascended master, Yeshua, and you wrote extensively about Yogananda. Would you refresh our memory on what was his perspective on karma?
Oh, Yogananda's perspective on karma was straight on, right from the texts of what we call Hinduism, from the sages of the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita and all the other great teachings that have come down over time. So he was in that school of thought. And if you read his writings, Autobiography of a Yogi, and all the other things he's written or he wrote and said in his lifetime, it would be perfectly consistent with what you find in uh, it, the writings and teachings of other gurus and other swamis and other sages over the course of history. He's from those lineages, that are very consistent when it comes to karma. He often would talk about Western religion as well, and as you know, was very uh, he had great love and respect for Jesus. and all the world's religions, but Jesus especially. And so he would say that Jesus had an understanding and preached karma and other concepts like reincarnation in ways that were more consistent with Eastern philosophy than we realize. That was his take on it.
Yes, and of course, if we consider the fact that Yeshua spent time in the Eastern countries,
So
especially
it is
India,
said.
Tibet, yeah, then
It is said that he did. Um, Whether he actually did, I can't say. I'm not tuned in on that level, but I do know that there are plausible theories that he spent time in India and Persia, and and it's not inconceivable. People from that part of the world did go back and forth in those days. Even earlier, the Greeks went back. Some of the Greeks went to India. Alexander the Great went to India and met yogis that we have a record of. So it's possible.
yeah, because so far no one can account for the 18 years that there is no reference
That's
to
right.
him. So I think that's the gap that everyone is hooking on and
Yeah,
claiming that
right.
that might be the reason why no one else could mention anything.
Right. Where were those years spent? What did he do? I mean, I don't know that we'll ever have a definitive answer to that, but it's interesting to speculate.
Yes. Phil, in the book you mentioned the story of Angulimala, which is quite powerful. What does it teach us about redemption and the possibility of karmic transformation?
Yeah, I opened the book with that. I have to confess it was my editor's idea to open with a teaching story about karma. So Angulimala was a terrible criminal at the time of Buddha, uh, a vicious criminal who stole and killed. And at one point, he decided he's going to kill 1,000 people. And he would put every person he killed, he'd cut off a finger and put it on a necklace so he could keep track. And as it happens, as the story goes, when he got up to 999, he said, okay, the next person I see will be my 1,000th victim. And who should that be but the Buddha himself, who happened to be in that area at that time? And the way the legend goes is Angulimala saw him and chased after him, followed him. And no matter how fast he walked or ran, the Buddha, he could never catch up. And the Buddha was just walking at his normal pace. And finally, Angulimala says, stop, stop, monk. And the Buddha turns around and says, I've already stopped. It's you who has to stop, which was, of course, very confusing. And he said, I've stopped harming living beings. I have vowed ahimsa, nonviolence. You still continue to harm people and kill. And that transformed the murderer, and he cast aside his weapons and asked Buddha to take him as a disciple. And he does, and he pursues his enlightenment with the same passion that he pursued crime and becomes a model monk in Buddha's lineage. But he still has the karma of all that he did. And so whenever he'd go out to gather alms, and donations, we could call them, food and drink, as monks were to do from the population, they would recognize him and taunt him and throw things at him and all that. And it bothered him that he had to put up with that. And the Buddha said, essentially, be patient. Imagine what the karma would have been if you had not been doing your meditation and your mindfulness practice and practicing compassion all this time and had continued on your way. So the lesson is that no matter what we do, the karma is going to come back to the past. But if we do the right thing in the meantime, when it comes back to us, um, it our load will be lightened. The consequence will be lightened because we've done good things to balance out the karmic scoreboard. And if we're on a spiritual path and we, like him, when stuff does happen, we'll be able to handle it better. And one of the analogies that I use in the book is not something I made up, it's something I heard from a guru a long time ago, was if you borrow money, you take on a debt, there will come a time when that debt comes due and you have to pay it off in full. What you do between the time you take out the loan and the time it comes back makes all the difference. So if you spend all your money in the meantime, if you incur more debt, then when the debt becomes due, it's a real problem. It's going to hurt. But if in the meantime you protect what you earn and you earn more so that when the debt comes due, you have a good bank account, then you don't feel it the same way. And that's similar to, doing good and bad in the world.
Yes, indeed. And how do you personally practice radical acceptance in the face of karmic challenges?
Yeah, if you mean how do I personally, it's a work in progress.
Like
I
for every
make
single one of us. Yeah.
Yes, I make no pretensions to having mastered even the advice I give, but I measure my progress by how well I handle things when bad things happen. Can I handle them with grace? Can I handle them with dignity, with a certain amount of, I've always aspired to what the Bhagavad Gita calls having equanimity in pleasure and pain, suffering and joy, victory and defeat. Whatever happens, to maintain some inner calm, inner peace. And we get better at it as we progress through it with our spiritual practices. And as I say, sometimes when I am not so good at it, well, I've only been meditating 57 years, so, it may take a little more time, but I'm better at it than I used to. And acceptance, what you said, I called it radical acceptance. That's critical because when bad stuff happens, the it it's no use uh, wallowing in regret or self-pity or trying to analyze why this is happening, or especially to blame it on other people, to just accept what is. This is happening. There's no wishing it away. You only increase your suffering if you wish it wasn't the case, if you blame others, if you self-pity yourself, a certain amount of that in the initial impact you can't avoid. But the sooner you can come to say, okay, this is what is, this is what the universe has placed before me, for whatever reasons the debt has come due. The package has been delivered to me. What do I do now? I accept the present, and then I have to make decisions. What am I going to say? What am I going to do moving forward? Because that will then determine the karma that you're now going to create, how you handle these things, whatever it is. And that goes for the good stuff too. As I said, it's not just the bad stuff. You get a sudden windfall, somebody you didn't even know died, and suddenly you're in the will. Wow, what do you do with that? Or you, like if my book suddenly is on the bestseller list and I get a big check, I could walk around very proud of myself. I could show off. I could waste the money on glamour or whatever, or I can do something good with it. I could be humble. I can help other people. Like whatever it is, there are ways to react to whatever karma puts in front of you that will create better karma going forward. And so acceptance is the first thing. If you don't accept the reality, you're going to not do the right thing.
Yes,
So,
and I think the inner motivations and how we are dealing with our daily life is very important. Being aware, as you said, of our minuscule tasks and interactions with those around us is something that piles up and increases or decreases our karma. Because we all get these type of packages you mentioned, so
yeah.
we have to know how to deal with them.
Yeah, everything we do is like putting a self-addressed stamped envelope in the mailbox. It's going to come back at some point with stuff in it. And
Yes.
so what how we react. And that goes for a lot of other things too, because one of the mistakes I hear people make is and it's an excuse for being indifferent. Something bad happens to someone or to a group of people. Uh, a flood or whatever. And people say, well, it's their karma. And as if that explains everything and takes them off the hook. It's their karma. If that is said from a place of indifference to the suffering of other people, or a lack of compassion, or an unwillingness to help, then that creates a certain kind of karma. So yet you could say to that person who says that, yes, it's their karma, but it's your karma, what how you react to it. So what creates better karma? If you have genuine compassion for people who are suffering, and if you're in a position to help, taking steps to alleviate their suffering, or saying, well, it's their karma, and walking away and being indifferent or callous. So that's part of the picture as well. And so is our thoughts and our intentions. As you know, I have a whole chapter on that. It's not just what we do, it's why we do it, what we intend by the action or our speech. You could you could say I love you to somebody because you want something in return and it's not sincere. And you could say the same words to somebody and it could melt that person's heart and mean everything to that person from the way what what's coming from your heart. Same with everything else. If you, I use the example of stealing. Every tradition, religious tradition, ethical tradition says you shouldn't steal. Okay, but if you're a professional thief and you rob somebody's belongings, especially somebody who can't afford to lose it, that's a certain kind of karma. If you're a mother who doesn't have any money and your child is hungry and you shoplift a candy bar to feed your child, that's a very different kind of karma. You
Indeed.
have a car accident, that's a certain amount of karma. Were you driving carelessly? Were you driving recklessly? Were you drunk? Or did something inadvertent happen and you regret it? And so all these things matter. It's not just so mechanical as we might think it is.
Yes, and I feel I taught myself to when I feel that I'm triggered by a politician, by their acts, I taught myself to just think that this is their karma to create chaos and awaken us or do something to humanity in order to change it in either way. So I'm not getting mad. I'm just calming myself down, saying, okay, this is what they're supposed to do. This is their contract. This is their karma. So maybe we all gonna be better if we think with the same from the same perspective.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard, Claudio, as you know, these day and age. And this comes up in my conversations all the time. Um, you participate in Canadian karma. I am participating in US karma. We're both affected by one another's leaders and karma. And it's a very challenging time. We can't deny that. Uh, but we also can't know the details and the nuances of what's happened. But I do know one thing: what we do matters. And yelling and screaming and shouting, maybe it serves a purpose, for the individual. We need to vent sometimes, and anger can be a justified thing. But then what do we do? Um, does it make us, uh, does our anger leak out so we're not nice to other people? That would just compound the bad karma.
Yeah.
If we convert the anger uh, to indignation and righteousness and say, I want to do something to make the world a better place, and we're kinder to other people as a result. I've had this conversation recently because so many people feel what's going on, is just going to create a lot of suffering. But we're individuals. I live in a small town in New England. There's just so much we can do. Um, and people feel frustrated. And so many people have come to the realization that at least I can be kind and compassionate beyond what I would normally be. I'm going to be nicer to the people I come across. I'm going to talk to strangers. I'm going to see who needs help in my neighborhood. I've started doing it. This sounds so trivial, but it matters. I realize in the course of my life in my town, I go to the hardware store, I go to the supermarket, I go to the food co-op. So many of the people working there have name badges. So I realized I should call them by their name.
Yeah.
So I started saying, how are you today, Joe? And, have a nice day, Sam, or Jill, or whoever. And, it matters. And, you create a little better karma that way. Maybe you make a difficult day just a little nicer, a little more easy for those people. So there's stuff we can do. And for those of us who are inclined to be active, to take a stand and uh, engage in the political and social issues of the day, if we can do it from a place of grace and calmness and wisdom, as opposed to, just rage, we'll be more effective. I mean, I think about it and I think, Gandhi was angry. He was the master of nonviolence, but that was a strategy. And he believed it. He put his spiritual principles into action and worked tirelessly to free his country from colonial power. And he was angry, but he converted that anger into righteous action. Same with Martin Luther King, same with Nelson Mandela, same with all the leaders who have a spiritual grounding. And those are good role models for us.
Yes, I agree that being loving and making a kind gesture to those around us is the best alternative, because otherwise the intensity of the fight and the darkness will just increase, and there is no
Yeah.
point in doing that.
Yes, and as the cliche goes, if it's dark, light a candle. If you add, to the darkness, it's not going to help.
Yeah. Phil, you mentioned the concept of near enemies, which is in Buddhist ethics. Can you share an example of how this subtle distinction has shown up in your life?
In my life,
Yes.
okay, let's see if I can get personal. The concept of the near enemy is that uh, our virtues, all of our good qualities, it's almost like Jung's shadow. It's in a similar way that everything, all the good stuff has a shadow. Everything has a dark side, just as everything has, as your fellow countryman Leonard Cohen said, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. The flip side of that is all the good stuff, there's often a shadow side. So we have a desirable attribute. Say it's compassion. The near enemy of compassion might be um, your your effort, in your attempt to help other people and be compassionate, uh, you might be taken advantage of, or you might neglect your family because you're busy being compassionate to strangers and doing good works in the world. So there's that near enemy. And that's more like the psychology concept of um, uh, taking a good quality too far or having it misdirected. But if you say, let's say compassion, the far enemy, as the Buddhists say, of compassion would be being cruel. The far enemy of being kind and loving kindness would be hatred. That's easy. The far enemy of peacefulness and equanimity would be anxiety and that sort of thing. But the near enemies are more subtle and harder to identify. So, in the Buddhist concept, the near enemy of compassion might be being smug or condescending without meaning to be, or just pitying somebody as opposed to being compassionate, leading to actions that help alleviate suffering. The near enemy of equanimity might be being indifferent or apathetic, not caring. Um, and so we have to be aware of those in our, uh, we want to be better people. I mean, if you're interested in making your karma, your personal karma, uh, better in the future, so good things come back to you as opposed to bad, uh, there's a certain inner transformation that might be looked at. You're going to change your behavior. You're going to change your the way you think, the way you respond to people, and so forth. And in so doing, you might say, "Oh, I'm going to be more compassionate from now on." But genuine compassion is different from pretending to be compassionate and saying the right thing. So it's more of an inner transformation that cultivates the actual capacity to be compassionate. I've seen a lot of people over the course of decades on the spiritual path, and they'll read like the passage I mentioned before, where in the Gita it says the yogis have equanimity and loss and gain, pleasure and pain, victory and defeat. And so they try to be that way. But if it's not real, then it's just a pretense. And if you're going to have pretense, it's better to pretend to be calm and peaceful inside than the opposite. But the reality is an inner transformation so that you actually have equanimity. It comes naturally and you are peaceful. It's not just putting on a show of it. And those are the things we have to be careful about, that we imitate the qualities we aspire to instead of actually cultivating them.
Yes, and also we can take that concept of near enemies and look for near similarities, people who are really walking this path and are empathic and kind, and every single action they do emanates love. So then we can just mimic what they do, but again, with the feeling, with the good intention.
Yeah, and if we're lucky enough to have contact with such people, and they're not many, but even people who are, perfect people are rare, if they exist at all. Everybody's human. But people who demonstrate those qualities, and there have been many in the course of history, and they may not be gurus or swamis or bodhisattvas in wearing robes. They could be the guy who's fixing your car.
Yep.
They're good people. And, if we're lucky to have them in our lives, and if we're really lucky and had them in our families when we were growing up, then those are the people it's worth holding as role models.
Yes.
And, but don't be too disappointed if you find out they're not perfect.
Yeah, that's another aspect of what can we can find out. And Phil, now that you had this step done in your life, writing about karma, have you had the curiosity to have a Akashic record reading to go deeper and see how that matches your life?
I have not. That would be interesting. I've been to India a number of times, and there are places in India where you can have these readings. And I've heard, incredible, phenomenal things that were revealed to people, and where you say, how could they possibly know it? But I have not. Years and years ago, I had similar things. Vedic astrologers and people who purported to have certain abilities. And I learned it was fascinating. But I haven't had it done in decades. And there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, I just want to live my life. I'll take what comes and do my best in the years I have left. I don't need to know all those details, but now you've piqued my curiosity, so maybe I will. Have you?
Yes, several times. And in fact, I did it live on this podcast, Akashic Records, about the podcast, to be honest
Really?
with you. Yes. And one about me, and it was fascinating, and the advice I received. And
Did you
uh,
follow it?
yes, yes. And things moved on very nicely after I accepted certain things. And yeah, I think they are real, but it's up to us to, again, accept them, um, believe that what we are told can happen, and move into that, towards that direction.
Did you have past lives as part of it?
Yes, I didn't go that deeper. I was focused more on something in a different aspect of this life. But I will go later on, maybe for another session, and dig deeper.
It's fascinating, and it ties into karma because if, somebody who has a gift of perception, or somebody who's really skilled at astrology, and these people who have access to Akashic records and the like, they can help with um, helping you understand your karmic patterns and help you react in the future when karmic comes up, help you make decisions now if you're at a crossroads in your life that would create better karma in the future, warn you about what might be coming up. I've had that. It's like, oh, be really careful of your health between this period and that period, or, don't spend all your money. You're going to need it, because, whatever. And they were remarkably accurate. And I've had people say, did something happen in your life, unusual happen in your life between this year and that year? And, and it'd be like my mother died, and, it's pretty amazing. I remember once when I was very young and I went to this was an astrologer or a psychic or something, which was very fashionable in my spiritual circles at that time. And I wasn't sure what to do with my life. I was fantasizing maybe I'll be a writer, but I wasn't sure. But at the time I was playing some music and I was fantasizing maybe I'll be a jazz musician. I wasn't very good. I was a total amateur, but I was fantasizing that. And I said to the person, yeah, I'm not sure, what my profession will be, my calling is, but I'm thinking of music and she looked at me and shook her head and said, I see you surrounded by books.
Yes.
And that's what happened. I've written all these books. I've, had to read hundreds of books, and my life has been surrounded by books. And so sometimes things are the writing is on the wall for those who can read it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful calling, and I'd like to read books. I write books, so yeah, to me that's very rewarding. Phil, if you have the chance to invite three historical personalities to dinner, who would these personalities be?
Three. Boy. I would have given some thought to this had I known. I probably would have obsessed about it. But I would, Shankara, the Adi Shankaracharya, the great sage of India's Advaita Vedanta tradition. Very much less is known about his life than we know about other luminaries like Buddha and Jesus. So I would love to sit down with him and say, did you really die in your early 30s? How did you accomplish all this? How did you do? And what does this actually mean? People have been arguing about this for centuries. Tell me what you meant. So he'd be one. And of course, it would be easy to say Buddha and Jesus, but let's be more creative.
I mean, you
Maybe
wrote about
Socrates.
Yogananda, so
I did, but I know enough about him. He left a good record and everything. Although it would be nice to sit down at dinner and say, what do you think of my book? Did I capture your life well? Did I do a good job on your biography? People have asked me, were you guiding me? Were you? I could ask him that. Um, but there are others as well that would be really interesting, like Plato or Socrates, or maybe uh, Galileo or Newton, some of the great scientists, and ask
yeah,
them about.
all
Or
good
in
choices.
my case, I might want to sit down with one of the writers who influenced me and talk to them. Maybe Ralph Waldo Emerson or I just you know who I might also want to talk to? I'm about to lead a tour, take a tour group to Italy, and we're going to do a retreat in Assisi.
Mhm.
So I'm reading about the life of St. Francis. It would be really cool to sit down with him and
Okay.
say,
For
what was it?
you, I'm going to order a bigger table so we can bring everyone together.
Right. It'll be a buffet. We'll have a buffet.
Phil, lovely conversation. Do you have any final remarks?
Well, of course, I want to encourage people to either pre-order my book if it's not yet October, or purchase it and read it. But in general, take karma seriously. You know, even if you're skeptical, you stand more to gain from giving it the benefit of the doubt, because it makes you responsible for what happens to you in your life. And if you just, when you're about to do something or say something, just say, well, if karma is real, this is going to have consequences. I think we'll have a better world if more people did that.
Indeed. Thank you very much and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you again.
Thank you. And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, leave a comment, visit the websites I mentioned at the beginning of the interview. And until next time, love and gratitude.